Hey, homeschoolers. This week, we're diving into a topic that hits close to home for so many of us: perfectionism. You know that voice in your head that says you're only as good as your last perfect day? The one that tells you that if you just work a little harder, organize a little better, or follow the right curriculum, everything will finally fall into place? I'm excited to have Pamela Good joining me today. Pamela is the author of He Never Let Go: Overcoming Childhood Trauma with the Love of God. And she has a powerful story about growing up in survival mode and how that shaped her into a perfectionist. But more importantly, she's going to share how she broke free from that exhausting cycle and what that means for us as homeschool moms. If you've ever felt like you're running on a hamster wheel, trying to prove your worth through doing everything right, this conversation is for you. So, settle in and let's talk about finding freedom from perfectionism. Pamela, I am excited to jump into our topic today, but before we do that, I would love to have you take a moment to tell us more about you and your family.
Sure. Thank you for having me on. So I have three other siblings. So there's four of us. I did also have a stepbrother at a certain time in our life, but we were children learning to navigate life. And mine started around 4. My younger brother was 1, navigating life um, with a beautiful mind mom, like Russell Crowe's movie, that was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia.
Mm.
And so my dad was beyond himself of how to handle this. And so he helped with his friends, some of his siblings helped, but we were learning to do life on our own pretty much, just knowing where if we needed to touch base with my dad who lived with my grandma, things like that. And so we each somehow picked a certain way to survive. So we were
Mhm.
mostly in survival mode. Especially for me, my whole life, for a long, long time. But we each did choose. We had like friends that we'd stay with, or we would. Mostly, I chose that I found out I was good in sports as time went on, and I would just throw myself into sports and working. As soon as I could work, I would work, and just anything to be away from home and boyfriends' families. And all of my siblings, we went through that. We stayed close. It was pretty devastating when my father died.
Mm.
But we tried staying close, and then my mother died. But we all have children, and we've all somehow have had successful lives. And we all joke about when we look back and go, how did we have and raise beautiful children like we have, successful, smart, and
Mm.
they have wonderful children as well, our grandkids. And we just marvel how did this happen? And obviously, God had a big hand in it, as we all realize later in life. So that's my
Mhm.
family.
Oh. Oh, well, thank you for sharing that story. I think that being raised in a family where a parent has a mental illness of some sort is a topic that isn't addressed nearly often enough. And so I'm really glad that you shared that, and also your testimony of how you have been able to raise wonderful families of your own despite having a real challenge in your family of origin. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. We do have some flaws that I've learned from my children, and my siblings have learned from their children. And part of that is in being trying to be perfectionist, and those things came out, you
Right.
know?
And that's a perfect transition because I want to talk with you about perfectionism today. So many
Okay.
homeschool moms feel like they're only as good as their last perfect day. I know I have felt like that many, many times. What do you say to the parent who feels that she constantly has to prove her worth through doing everything right?
Uh, my heart goes out to you because I've also seen my daughter do that. And so as I did it because I wanted people to think I was worthy. Even though I came from a they know, a lot of people knew, a lot of people didn't know what kind of home I came from or my mom, but I didn't want people to see me as broken. So I was going to be the perfect mother, even though I never had one and never saw it, or a perfect wife, or the perfect person at my job. And so, whatever it was, I was going to be the best of the best. And that put so much pressure on you. And unfortunately, it carries over then on your children. And for example, some comments like were made from some of my kids that I was very critical.
Mm,
And I'm like, what? I thought you guys were fabulous. But
mm,
what they saw was I was being critical of me
mm,
and I needed to be better. And so somehow it came through to them when I would ask them to do something or this needs to be done. It came through that I needed them to be also perfect. And it I didn't realize it was doing that until
mhm,
later in life when they made that comment. And it's exhausting for the it's
mhm,
exhausting
mhm,
because you will never be perfect. Only Jesus is perfect. But, you know, you just feel get on that, like the animals that get on that little wheel and go round and round. You just feel you can achieve it. You can achieve it.
mhm.
And there's so much more to life than that you can't.
Right. And what you're describing is that survival mode where we're just working harder and harder, not getting anywhere, and we're feeling less
Yes.
and less peace in our
Yes.
lives. And so, how do you think a homeschooling mom can recognize when their high standards, even if they're just high standards for themselves? And I love that you talked about that even though you were really just focused on yourself and how you wanted to be perfect, it did have an impact on your kids and what they thought they needed to do. So how can we as parents recognize when our high standards have crossed a line into something that's dysfunctional?
Well, I didn't realize it till I kind of broke and realized I was broken and dysfunctional and trying to prove I wasn't. And so I
Mm,
had to really kind of take a deep breath because of, I think it just came from my children when they were old enough to voice their opinion, you know. And when I stepped back, and I thought, what is this? And I had to take, when I broke and really broke deep, I had to go, what is the common denominator between this? And it was Satan, the ruler
mhm,
of darkness, and me. And I didn't realize those voices telling you, you need to do this, or this isn't good enough, or do this, and you can do more, and you can be it all. When I read the book, Joyce Meyer, Battlefield of the Mind, and when I read that, I'm like, holy moly, this isn't me being me. This is someone telling me, and it has been my whole life, correct? And so, and then I had to learn the verse John 10:10, which says he comes to kill, steal, and destroy any joy, peace, happiness. But, Jesus came to give us abundant life.
mhm,
Once I learned some of that, and it was so much later than that's why I did the book and I speak because I want moms to grasp this much younger. And when
mhm,
I speak to the momcos, I want them to see that they need to get out this whatever it is inside of them that they're carrying, their wounds, their hurts, those strongholds Satan has on them. to release them to Jesus because, oh my gosh, it just carries on to the people we love. And so I realized I had a part in that, and I was allowing this to happen to me. And I was a gold medal winner for Satan because I just kept doing it
Mhm.
and pushing and pushing and pushing.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
Um, I think though, um, that I mean, this is just something that has been coming to my awareness recently. I have been talking for years and years and years about how we as human beings respond to people having grief. Okay. So we're uncomfortable with it. We don't
yeah,
like it when people are grieving. We tend to do things to kind of keep grieving people at arm's length because of our own discomfort. But I've realized recently that we also do that to people who've had very, very difficult childhoods, very painful childhoods, traumatic childhoods. And I mean, it can be in adulthood or any other time of
yes,
life
yes.
also. But, I am just thinking about what you and your siblings were experiencing as children. And my guess is there were very few people who came into your lives to say, "Hey, I am sorry that you are going through this. You are wonderful kids. You haven't done anything wrong, um, to make this happen. It's normal and it's okay if you have all the feelings, the anger,
Yeah.
the disappointment, the sadness, the grief." Um, and so the reason I'm bringing that up is because I think it's so easy for us to get down on ourselves for not coping with a very, very difficult situation perfectly, right?
Yep. Yep.
But we also probably haven't had the kind of support that we needed in that time, just like many people who are grieving don't have the support that they need. Does that feel
Oh,
true to you?
it resonates so well with me. Thank you for sharing that because it was so chaos. It was such chaos that we each had to find our little peace place. And in doing that, I never, ever remember going to someone and crying and saying, this is happening or this I feel, not ever. And so you just somehow God gave this perseverance just for us to survive and resilience. But what worked then later in my life wasn't working because I needed to go in, right, and heal it. And each one of us are such a perfectionist. We need it to be just like this. And that's where we feel we have calmness. If I can have my house in perfect order, it's not chaos, you know? But
Mhm.
there's something behind that, and it's not just because 'cause you're type A, it's part of that. But yes, so I agree so much, and with the grieving, 100%, because when I was going through my healing, it took me 10 years to grieve for my dad, because I I didn't go to anyone to grieve for my dad, not even my husband, because I
Mhm.
always had to do it myself, and so when I finally was going through this healing, I thought everything was going good and I crashed again. And I realized there's one more thing. And I went to a women's kind of retreat thing. And the very last day, I realized, and I was crying, and I realized I had to let go of that little girl who was so sad and still hanging on to my leg and give her to Jesus to take her home to be with mom and dad.
Mhm.
And once I did that, it's like, oh, okay, I can start my life now.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
yeah, we didn't have counselors in school. And well, maybe in high school. She just told me I obviously wasn't going to college. That's what she told me. That was our
Wow.
counselor. I know. So that was a whoo, that was my dad wasn't happy with that. But you're right. We didn't have people come alongside. It's just this is what you do, this is our life. You keep going, you
Mhm.
know? No
Mhm.
one ever talked to us about it till way
Mhm.
later. And we didn't talk till I started doing the book and
Mhm.
asking lots of questions to my siblings. So you're
Mhm.
right on, you're so right on with the grief and with people coming along and helping.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Right. And I think the other piece of it is to I mean, this is just something that I've been really thinking a lot about as I research and I create things that I believe can be helpful to other homeschooling parents is the idea that you found coping strategies that allowed you to survive.
Yes.
And those strategies,
Right.
as with
Mhm.
any very challenging, traumatic um, time, um, will um, will suggest is that those strategies can work for that time. So
Yes.
when you were living with a mentally ill mother and the dysfunction of that home, those strategies were very effective and kept you going. But if we continue to use those strategies,
Yes.
we're gonna run into a wall because
Mhm.
those strategies don't work long term. They
They don't.
they can only work to help us survive in that situation, and so, my point is that I believe that, moms who have been in that, um, type of situation, they have wounds from their own upbringing, and they chose their method of coping, have to give themselves grace and just say,
Yes.
"Oh, yeah," not say, "Wow, you were really messed up, and that's so bad that you were using that as a coping strategy," because no, you did what you had to do in order to keep showing up every day.
Yes.
And now it isn't working for you
Correct.
in your current life. And so that that is so brave just to even recognize that it's not working and you wanting to make a change. But I don't think it serves us to bash ourselves.
No. No,
Yeah.
I agree with you. Thank you for bringing that up because that's totally not. No, I don't want to bash myself, and I've had to really learn to set my boundaries so other people don't
Mhm.
use that on me as well. Because unfortunately, sometimes my siblings' children are all children. Sometimes of course, they're kids too, so they don't understand, and they're angry, and why was my mom and dad like that, right? Because even my kids would say we felt like we had to walk on eggshells,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
once I those coping strategies worked, but then it got to the point they weren't working, and so I I was breaking, and I crashed, and I burned big time, and so I had to learn what why it wasn't working anymore because I would think, "Okay, I've always fixed myself." So one of my coworkers says, "Just do a boxing bout, get some of that anger out." So I boxed.
Oh, wow.
Like I did. I had a boxing bout. I know. And I was in the frame of mind, I could do it and I needed to do it. And then I jumped out of an airplane thinking, "Oh, this will clear my head." I went extreme with not just working out and doing sports, then I went extreme. And then I realized, okay, this didn't work. There's
Mhm.
something else that I crashed and burned. I cannot do this for myself anymore. And realized I need to heal spiritually and reached out. And so I had to find a new way of coping
Mhm.
and healing
Mhm.
until I can realize but they served me well. You're right.
Mhm.
Those
Mhm.
served me well. That's how I survived. And even I had a friend say to me, oh, and when I sat down and explained a few things to him, because I had pulled back from this friendship, we were like yah sisters. And I just told him, I have to pull back. If certain people hurt me, I withdraw. And that happened with my husband. I withdraw and go, I can't trust them anymore. And
Mm.
so I explained to them as I was going through my healing what I was going through. And they said, well, you just seem like you don't need any help. You did it all. No matter
Mm.
what you decided to do, I'm going to work for the Colorado State Penitentiary. I did. I'm going to jump out of an airplane. I did. I'm going to go back to school and become a surgical tech. I did. Because I didn't think I had a choice.
Mhm.
Choice, I had to do those things to survive. So they looked at me like, you didn't need anybody by your side.
Mhm.
And I says, well, I guess I did what I set out to do because I didn't want anyone to think I was broken. So
Mhm.
I achieved that goal. But in doing so, it hurt me.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
Right. You didn't have, um, people coming alongside you, offering you the
yes.
emotional support that you needed. And so I think what you're saying is it's important not to pull back. I mean, if you have reason to believe that the person is someone who can be trusted,
Yes.
to help you, or and even to respond honestly to your feedback. But that we don't want to just think, "I can fix this myself," because that again is another common, behavior from kids who've been, raised by mentally ill parents, kids with substance, abusing or dependent parents. That's
Yep.
very, very common to just think, "It's all on me. I've got to do this."
Yeah.
Um, I wanted to point something out to you though that you were saying how your kids are saying, "Well, we felt like we were walking on eggshells." And I'm sure that was hard for you to hear. However, it demonstrates that you already had um made some positive changes in your relationship with them, certainly beyond what you experienced as a child, because your kids felt able to be honest with you and talk with
Right.
you about what they were experiencing. Kids who are really terrified of their parents and their inability to parent well will not do that. They won't even say a word about it. So I just want to say how wonderful that is that your kids felt free to be honest with you.
Thank you. And yes, I worked on my healing. I worked really hard to work and make myself more open and better. And when I was writing the book, I know a lot of they thought maybe I was doing it for healing, and I was, but they didn't think I would publish it, I think. And so when I was writing it, I I would go to my siblings and I would go to my children and say, "Do I have this right? Do I understand this is how you felt? Because this is how I felt." Because I needed to see what they were really thinking and feeling if I'm going to say that in the book. And
Mhm.
so that's where that came in, and they were
Mhm.
willing to share with me. Yes.
Mm. Well, that is a gift that you gave them, just, giving them permission to express how they felt. So I think that's amazing too.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so let's bring it back to perfectionism and our relationship with God. Many
Okay.
times we think God will be disappointed in us unless we perform. We check all the boxes. So, what truths about God's love helped you stop believing that lie?
Well, I didn't believe that lie because I was never really the first encounter I had with Jesus was when I was 9.
Mhm.
I went to Bible camp. A friend of mine took me. But then after that, I believed in Jesus, but I didn't really think it through. I was still in survival mode.
Mhm.
When I actually crashed and burned, a pastor said to me, Jesus is right there. Just reach out. He will help you. And I did. And so I never really felt he was disappointed, except for when something was missing, something went wrong. I would just cry and go, why? Why me, God? Why did I do
Mhm.
something wrong? And I did
Mhm.
do that.
Mm.
And once I realized, truly realized from scripture, from worship songs that I listened to and messages, it finally sunk in that I was a child of God. And if the Son sets you free, you're free indeed. And once I realized that there's a song called I Am Yours, and it says, I am not my regrets, not my failures, not my any of those things. I am seen, I'm heard, I'm loved by God. And those things, I mean, I would listen to worship songs over and over just to fill my head full of that positive
Mhm.
stuff. And like Lauren Daingle's song, You Say, this is what you say of me, I believe. And I finally started believing and believing that I'm a child of God. And like when a doctor criticized me going home one night, I was just devastated. And then I thought, no, I'm a child of God. He does not define me. God defines me, and He
Mhm.
loves me just as I am. And I know that because I know myself before I started following Him, and I know myself now. And there's a huge difference in those two people.
Mhm.
And He waited for me. He was there all along. As I was writing my memoir, I realized all the places He was, and I was in awe of that. But He waited till I was ready.
Mm.
And and so once I reached out, it was on.
Yeah. That's cute. That's very cute.
Look out.
Yeah, well, that's excellent, and I think you just kinda wove in some truths, into that answer that we can definitely hold on to, and I love your advice to listen to, Christian music. That can be so, so helpful for changing our thinking. And I thought we could um, kind of finish up by talking about what if someone who is listening to us has been hiding their flaws, what they think are their flaws, behind achievement or busyness.
Oh,
Where do you think they should start if they want to live with more authenticity?
well, I think everyone is slightly different, but I think I started going and listening to the messages at church, and it's like, because I was new. So every one of them just like, oh, he must have saw my thoughts. He's speaking to me. Just me. But I have to say, I took the book that hit me the most is Battlefields of the Mind, because I battled things in my mind so deeply. But I also took a course, and it had you go through, but you have to be ready because it's a real deep course about yourself. So I just feel, and I had a son who um, became Christian, and he kind of mentored me because
Mm,
I'd always say, what am I doing wrong? He goes, why do you think it's you, Mom? Why do you think it's you?
mm,
Just pray for God to reveal blah, blah, blah. Right.
mhm, mhm,
And so having
mm,
someone walk alongside you that can kind of help you with that,
mm,
but also be truthful and not say to you, none of it's you, because
mhm,
some of it is you. Right.
mhm, mhm,
And there are those people that just wash it all over. You're perfect. You're fine. You're sweet. You're
mm,
wonderful. But no,
mm,
not it wasn't for me. I needed to
mhm,
know I'm a raw and real person, and I
mhm,
need to hear it that way. And
mhm,
so once I started listening to pastors that were raw and real, and I found a couple, it it really helped me sit home with that and the
Mm.
messages. And then I would just journal and things
Mhm.
start coming into my head. And I'm just thinking, oh, this and that. And, every little spiritual formation class I could take, I did because it sees where it helps your thinking go to the right place and instead of to where the ruler of darkness wants you to sit.
Yep. Yep.
So,
Very, very good. Those are all excellent.
so
Okay, so you've been referencing your book as we've been talking. Can you give us the title of your book, where we can find it, and how we can connect with you online?
okay. So the title of my book is He Never Let Go. And that's because I realized he never did through my whole life. But it's also subtitled Overcoming Childhood Trauma, Mental Illness of Childhood Trauma with the Love of God. And so you can find it on my website, PamelaWagnerGood.com. You can find it at Barnes and Nobles, Amazon. Um, because of who I publish through, Ingram Sparks, they any bookstore can order through them.
Okay,
So
wonderful.
yes.
And are you on any social media or just your
Oh
website?
no, I am. I'm on a couple Facebooks. I have an author page, Pamela Wagner Good. I also have another one, Pam Good. I think I had so many. I know I have my regular and then I have my other one. So yes, I am on Facebook. So yeah, it's hard to keep track of them all. I have them all in different pictures. I know. I don't know why. And what's interesting, Melanie, if I could share this, I entered a book award and I won for trans um transformative stories.
Mm,
So from where and I did have several reviews on my book say, "I know you now, but once I read your book, I would have never put the two people
mm,
together."
hmm.
So there's growth there. I'm so proud to
Right,
say.
right. Well, that
I
is
have
wonderful.
grown. So
Yes,
thank
and
you for having me.
it is honestly my pleasure, and I will be putting the links for people to find your book and to connect with you online, and don't worry about it. So many authors come on, they can't remember the names of their social media accounts exactly. We all have so many now, so completely understandable. It's imperfect, and that's okay.
You know what? I'm a recovering perfectionist. And I'm proud of it. But I have
Good.
to say, it was a joy talking to someone who can relate to
Mhm.
to those feelings and to
Yes.
where children could be. So
Yes.
thank you for that.
You are so welcome. Thank you so much to Pamela for sharing her story with us. If her journey resonated with you, I encourage you to check out her book, He Never Let Go. You can find it on Amazon, at Barnes& and Noble, or at PamelaWagnerGood.com. Pamela is also on Facebook as Pamela Wagner Good. Remember, friend, you are not defined by your productivity. You are not measured by how perfectly your homeschool runs. You are a child of God, loved just as you are. And as Pamela reminded us today, God is not disappointed in you. He's right there beside you, ready to help you carry those burdens you were never meant to carry alone. If this episode encouraged you, would you share it with another homeschool mom who might need to hear this message? You can find the resources discussed in the show notes page at homeschoolsanity.com/perfect mom. Have a happy homeschool week.